Teachers of Reddit, what is the smartest, most creative way of cheating that you've seen? So, not a teacher, but I witnessed probably the biggest cheating-related scandal in our high school's history. For context, we had the sweetest old guy as our chem teacher. He called everyone bud or buddy or mom. He always helped. He volunteered to teach driver's ed after school so kids could learn to drive. He always had a twinkle in his eye because he genuinely showed love and kindness to everyone. A side effect of this was that he was very trusting. So one day, before finals, he ran to the bathroom during class while everyone was wrapping up their lab reports. While he was gone, someone ran to his desk, found the finals just sitting there, snapped a pic, and then ran back to their desk before he got back. Somehow, no one tattled, probably because 90% of our grade level in that class was on board with it. The pictures got texted around, but a few people were smart enough to Bluetooth into each other so it couldn't be tracked. Well, after the test, everyone had high scores and apparently someone confessed. This resulted in a Huma-Huma investigation by the assistant principals, school police officer, and faculty. They traced every text message and busted so many people, all except the ones who transferred via Bluetooth. They had to reissue the test. Man, that was crazy. I felt so bad for the teacher. He was really sad someone had taken advantage of him, and I was too. Such a good dude. I was grading a written assignment that had a 1,000 word count minimum, and one particular paper just felt really short to me despite Word telling me it was roughly 1,100 words long. On a hunch I hit Ctrl+A, and sure enough, after the paper concluded, there was a lot of white nonsense text on a white background. That's gotta be the dumbest form of lengthening a paper there is. If you email the document, one click foils the plan, and if you turn in a hard copy, the white text doesn't even count. If you turn in a physical copy, you won't have a strictly enforced word count, probably a page count if anything, and 9/10 students don't email their papers. There will be a turn-in portal somewhere that typically doesn't detect the white text. There was a class that allowed you to bring one sheet of handwritten notes to exams. I knew a guy that created a font of his own handwriting and used to print the entire study guide onto a piece of notebook paper, front and back. He even set the font color to pencil gray and managed to get the margins and spacing exactly right to look like it had been handwritten. Modern problems require modern solutions. Used a text file on one of the original iPods. Teacher was fine with listening to music during tests. Made my life so much easier. You should have made your own math rap album. Not a teacher, but one of my friends in high school wrote all the physics equations we needed to know in really tiny font on Jolly Rancher wrappers. I had summaries of chemistry and a load of math formulas on my graphic calculator TI-83, and I had a backup on a thumb drive so that I could put it back after a mandatory reset. My girlfriend works for a dental exam company, which are obviously super high-stakes exams. Since the exams are worldwide, they have actually found people from one time zone paying people from another time zone to email questions to them right before the exam starts. Stretch a rubber band around a textbook, write whatever you want on it, then when you take it off the textbook, it'll just look like scribble until you stretch it to see what's written. Spanish conjugations drove me to do some incredibly unethical things. How would you use those without looking suspicious? You could say it's a fidget thing, but it's risky. Establish a precedent before the exam. Have a rubber band in class every day. I had class in the AM with a kid who was a tar for my physics class the afternoon before weird period system at my old school. He would tell me the answers to app tests he had graded the day before, and I would write them in black ink on the side of the sole of my black boots. I would then sit with my leg bent with my foot on my knee and read the answers during the test. You couldn't see them unless the light hit the ink just right. After the test I would just lick my finger and smudge the answers out. A classmate was printing the answers on his paper in a very pale gray so that it barely can be seen. Still got caught because the teacher noticed him reading an empty sheet. I did this once in a college class. Sort of. The class was real analysis, and there was one problem that was absolutely going to be one on the final exam. It had been one for every final exam this professor had ever written, of which he gave us copies to study from. And it was one on the study guide for our final. I couldn't do it. I tried and tried and tried, and studied, and got help. and whatever I did I could not figure out the finer point of this specific type of proof given in this specific context. So I resorted to memorizing the steps and getting it down to a sequence of blanks I could fill in. Exam day comes. I buy 2 blue books that morning test booklets with lined paper inside. In one of them I very faintly write the answer to one complete with space to fill in the aforementioned blanks. On the front I fill in my name to differentiate it from the other booklet. When the professor tells us to take out our blue books and trade with the person next to us, I trade my blank blue book. I take the one I'm given and slip it into my backpack. At the same time I slide out my blue book with my calculator and pencil so it all looked legit. I get my test. One doesn't fail. It is exactly as expected. I fill in the blanks and write over my words. I continue on with the exam, and I pass the class. Writing down math formulas and putting them in the instructions insert of the calculator. More recently, kids will put the answers on the smart watches. It's to the point where I make all students remove their watches and place them on the classroom counter before the test starts. I've done the calculator trick all throughout school. I'll admit to it, though I had the equations saved in the graphing slots that the calculator provides for actually plotting lines. There was no way to find it unless the professor chose to open up the graphing section and go through my line plots. Never got caught. You don't need to memorize these formulas for real-life application. You can look them up as needed. The real skill is understanding how to use the formulas to actually get the information you want. I've never understood why professors force students to remember equations in math classes. In all my psychology courses we don't have to remember any equations. Just have to know how they work and what they're for. During a keyboard harmony lab exam, a room with 28 keyboards. One devious student had previously recorded another student's perfect performance of the exam piece on MIDI. The cheater played the recorded piece on MIDI, but used all the right hand motions on his keyboard at the back of the room to try to fool me that he was actually playing it in real time. Unfortunately for him, the student he recorded happened to be my piano student, and I recognized the distinctive playing immediately. I didn't embarrass him during class by calling him out on it, but dealt with the problem privately, a lesson he told me later that would stay with him for the remainder of his life. During a spelling test, Miss, how do you spell piano? The spelling word was piano. Teacher went on autopilot and started spelling the word. Printing a fake water bottle label with test information on it. Back in mid-2000, schools here in Australia started to have strict guidelines on what could be brought into exams. Water was allowed, but must be kept in a non-labeled bottle. If you bought water, you have to rip off the label. As a student, I remember when my entire year level was accused of cheating, as the test results came back consistently high. What the teachers failed to realize was that some of the answers were actually hidden in other questions. So if you got stuck on one question, you could find the answer later on in another question. An example would be this was a Japanese language test. What does word mean? And later on, a question would use that word in context, so you would understand what that word meant. I'm a high school teacher, but this story is about my own high school math teacher playing us and cheating. It was an honors algebra geometry class, and it was well known that Mr. D reused the same questions every year, just changed the numbers. He made a big deal about making sure we all gave our exam papers back to him after we had looked at our scores and gone over everything together to prevent cheating for the next year. Well, of course, some of my classmates got their hands on a complete set of tests from the previous year. Soon, everyone had a set. Before each exam, we would sit together and make sure we knew how to solve every problem on that test so we could do it on the real exam with different numbers. Years later, when I became a teacher myself, I saw Mr. D at a funeral. I confessed to him that this is what we used to do. He smirked and said, "Who do you think leaked the test packet to get you to study?" Mr. D had figured out that kids won't study if the teacher suggests it, but if they think they're getting away with something, they totally will. So he managed to get a test packet out and circulating as contraband. Blew my mind. Not a teacher, but I used to lightly write the answers on a desk before the test with pencil. If someone calls you out on it before the test and you claim that you're using the write the material down method of studying and didn't notice that it was marking the desk, after using the necessary material you just rubbed the pencil marks off of the desk, thus destroying the evidence. My sister-in-law is a teaching assistant at her kids' school. Her youngest daughter, my niece, was 7 at the time. She stole the test the night before, pretended it was homework and had her mom help her with her homework, then sneaked the answers into the test. One of the other kids caught her, let the teacher know, and my sil, who was overseeing test conditions, died inside when she realized it was the homework sheet that she'd filled out. As a student, we used to wear uniforms and leather shoes. As mine's a beta pair, I usually write on them with black ink pens. And when tests came, I angle it just enough to be seen by sunlight. Also, the edges of our uniform are filled with formulas. This is slightly off topic, but I had an app physics teacher who put a question that we hadn't learned on our first quiz just to prove a point. All of the first period got the question wrong. Half of second period got it right. All of third period got it right. His point was proven. Wait, what is this proving? Did first period kids warn the other periods? Yup, between periods, kids would tell the other kids, there's a question about X, so look that up. I think we rationalized it because we weren't telling them the answers, just what to study, but it amounted to the same thing.